Hi everyone, this is Literature Decoded. I know because you've clicked on this video that you're struggling with your KVS, DSSSB, NBS, or any other state examination in which literature is involved. And that is why I'm here to tell you that you've clicked on the right video. See, I know there is a lot of information available on the internet, and we don't know what is relevant, what is not relevant, what do we study, what do we leave. And that is why we have this channel, Literature Decoded, where we decode each and every historical aspect of literature. We understand different poets, we understand different categories, and we take everything from the scratch. Now, I want you to keep a notebook with you side by side so that you can make notes, and then accordingly, whatever I'm writing here on the board, you also can write and you also can go through your notes later on. Now, whenever we talk about English literature, it all starts with one man, that is Geoffrey Chaucer. And Geoffrey Chaucer is actually one of the favorite topics of the examiners to give questions from. So, and rest assured, whatever I am writing on the board, that will come directly in your exam. I can guarantee you this because it is one of the favorite topics, and also it is very easy, it is very direct, it is the beginning of English literature, and that is why this makes our topic very important. First, Geoffrey Chaucer, if you are a beginner, you might not have heard his name, or if you are someone who has seen a lot of videos or who have gone through MCQs at least, you know that this is an important character. Why he is an important character? Because he is called the father of English literature. All of the English literature starts with him. Why? Because he was the first one to actually use English, to actually popularize English as a language. Up until his time, French and Norman was the language because Anglo-Normans were there. So these two were the languages which were very important, French, Latin, and the way in which Norman people used to write. But he was the one who actually found English. He was the one who used his dialect, and then he popularized the language. That is why he is often called the father of English literature, or he is also called the father of English poetry. And this is the often asked question in your examination: who is the father of English literature, or who is the father of English poetry? That we have Geoffrey Chaucer. So in this video today, we'll understand very basic facts about him. For example, when was he born? Where was he born? What were his parents? Any profession, any detail that we need to keep in mind? See, I am preparing this content because I know that we have to prepare for objective questions, we have to prepare for MCQs. So I want to keep it as concise as possible, because otherwise you would drown in a lot of information. You don't need a lot of information, you just need factually correct data so that you can make your notes, and then you can keep on revising again and again, because time is the topmost priority in competitive exams. So we should know all of these things by heart. When was he born? So when he was born, that is actually debatable. He was born around 1342 or 1343. So this part, this question usually does not come. But when he died, that is fixed. So that becomes a hot question. He died on 25th October 1400. And side by side, I will also tell you how to learn these things, how to keep these things in your mind. Because see, for me it is very easy to say all of these things, right? But he is not just the only writer that we have to study. We have to study a lot of poets, we have to study a lot of novels, we have to understand. And in literature, that is the only thing, that we have a lot of information to keep in mind. So how do we do that? How do we make a timeline in our mind so that each and everything is compartmentalized? That also I'll tell you, don't worry. So he was born in 1342 to 1343, and he died in 25th he died on 25th October 1400. He was born in London, and his parents name, his father's name was John Chaucer, and he married Agnes Copton. So John Chaucer was actually a wine merchant. So they belonged to an affluent family. That's it. You just have to keep this thing in your mind, that the names of the father, he was born in London, and the date. Then what do we need to keep in mind? We also need to keep in mind the era in which he wrote, the dialect in which he wrote, and the language in which he wrote. All of this comes directly in your paper. The era was actually Middle English era, and the dialect was East Midland. And this is a very important question, East Midland dialogue, because it comes directly in your paper. What was the dialect in which Chaucer wrote? And what was the language? Again, it was Middle English language. So, why do we actually study him? Why is he actually called the father of English literature? See, to give someone a characteristic like this, that is the father, that means he is someone who has founded the language. He has someone who has contributed a lot to this language. That is why, and we'll study when we are studying his works. That is when we'll actually study what all contributions he has made. His important work, and he's very famous for this work actually, that is Canterbury Tales. For DSSSB students, this Canterbury Tales become very important because it is actually given in your syllabus. If you have gone through your syllabus, in your KVS Chaucer is mentioned, but in your DSSSB Canterbury Tales is mentioned because they have directly picked up the syllabus from DU. And in DU, in the very first semester, we understand about Chaucer and we understand about Canterbury Tales. So there are 24 tales in total, and we'll study each and every one of the tale. Second, we'll understand what all MCQs come. See, the point is for you to keep in mind the MCQs. That is the main point, that is the bottom line, and that is what I'll remind you again and again also, why he is important and what all points do we have to understand. So Canterbury Tales is again his most important work, and he became very famous also for this work, most important work. So these are a very common facts that we need to keep in mind. One very important thing when we are talking about his death is that Chaucer, and again you will find this question very often, is that Chaucer was the first poet to be buried in Poets Corner. Poets Corner is a very famous corner in which all the famous, renowned poets are buried, which is there is in Westminster Abbey, which is in London. Very frequently asked question. And when you are making notes, as I told you, when you are making notes, you need to keep certain points in mind. See, of course, I'm telling you the important points. From these points also, I'll tell you the most asked point. So when he died, that date and that year becomes very important. See, 1400 you'll easily remember because that is the sort of beginning of another decade. It's the beginning of 15th century. So 1400 is a more or less easier date to keep in mind. Then he was born in London. We all know, because we are studying English literature, we all know that most of the poets are born in or around London. So London we all can understand. This is very important. What is the dialect in which he wrote? So he wrote in East Midland dialogue, and his work Canterbury Tales is very important. And also this, that he was the first poet to be buried in Poets Corner, and this, that Chaucer is known as the father of English literature. Now we will move on to, I hope all of you have written it. At least if you have not written it, I'll be side for just 2 seconds. You can take a screenshot, because if you are, if you're traveling or if you're working or if you're somewhere else and you can't make proper notes, then at least you'll have this. This is very concise data. You'll have this, and then you can keep it, you can keep going through it. So you can just take a screenshot quickly. Right. Now we will understand. I will erase this, and now we will understand there are three. See, the number 3 is very important for Chaucer. Okay, he was born in 13, so 3 is important. He 1342 or 1343, so 3 is very important. He lived under the regime of three kings. There were three important instances that happened during his rule, and also his work is divided into three sort of areas. So three is very important. Okay, keep the number three in your mind. Now, let us understand he lived under three kings. So we have three kings, and I'll tell you also how to learn it. See, my objective is not just to give you data. This data is easily available. If you've clicked on this video and I want you to take something from this video, one, and second, I want you to keep those things in your mind because that is more important. If you are able to retain it, that is more important. Otherwise, all of this is just a waste. Okay. So he lived under three kings. Then he have three historical events that happened when Chaucer was alive, and his works can be divided into three areas of works. Okay, let us understand it one by one. What are the three? Who are the three kings? He lived, sorry, he was born, he lived, and he died under three different kings. So he was born when King Edward III was the king. He lived when Richard II was the king, and he died when Henry IV was the king. How to keep this in mind? See, either you can do 3, 2 or 4 like this, because it's not, see, it's not 2, 3, 4, otherwise it would have been very easy, but it is 3, 2, 4. So if you can keep that in mind, you know that is also one way to go. Otherwise, how we can understand is, there is a very famous text that he wrote on the wedding of Richard II, that we'll understand when we are doing the texts. Now, how to keep that in mind? Because he is writing a text on the wedding of Richard II, that means he of course is living and he's writing, he's a writer during that, he's a poet during that, right? And because he was born, so he can't obviously write as when he's born. So he's born when Edward III is the king, lived when Richard II is the king, and he died when Henry IV was the king. Now, three historical events also happened. See, whenever we are understanding literature, why we have to keep the historical events in mind is because literature cannot be written in a vacuum. Everything that takes place in the society is influencing literature in one way or the other. So the very first thing that happened was bubonic plague. Bubonic plague or Black Death. That happened in 1348 to 1352. Okay, mind my, I am writing it in a very spacious manner so that it is clearly visible to you, and also because you can easily recall it again also. And then second, we have, so Black Death was a lot of times Black Death episodes, it was very recurrent in the England. So nearly one third of the population wiped out. Then second, we have the 100 Years' War. 100-year war was between England and France. And this actually it happened for 116 years. Now, you might think that why are we reading this? Because examiners, they ask this thing. Very first thing, what do they ask? This question directly comes. Chaucer was born during which king's regime? He lived during which king's regime? He died during which king's regime? So these three things, ERH, if you want to keep in mind, you can keep in mind like this. E looks like 3, right? So Edward III, you can keep that in mind. Then 2, if you want to, this you can make like 2, or H more or less looks like See, you can see here. So H more or less looks like 4. So you can keep these things in your mind. These are just small mnemonics so that you can easily understand. Otherwise, if you keep on watching this video again and again, you'll recall, don't worry. Then second thing, this is often asked. Even in fact, I saw this question in one paper, that what was the population after the bubonic plague happened, or how much of the population was wiped out during Chaucer's rule. So this also becomes important, and very important is this, that in reality the 100 Years' War was for how many years? So it was for 116 years. It happened between England and France. This also is a very important question. So what I want you, see, I am not saying that you trust me as it is. What I am saying is, you go through the video, then you put some MCQs related to Chaucer, and then see whether you are able to do those MCQs. And I assure you, more or less, if you've gone through the video thoroughly, you'll be able to do the MCQs. Or at least if you are not, you can tell me in the comment section that this aspect was missing, and then we can do it. Third thing that happened is, here, if I want to write, okay, let's just write here, because this is not very, it will not take much of our space. So let's write here. The third aspect, the third historical thing that happened was peasants' revolt. This again becomes a very favorite question regarding the date. So this happened in 1381. This was led by Wat Taylor. So these are the three events that happen. Now, why do we understand? Why do we want to know this? And how does this affect Chaucer's poetry? When this 100 Years' War was happening, just a trivia, Chaucer went to France, and there he got captured also. So the King of England, he gave money to France to release Chaucer. He went to France. That is why his poetry is also influenced from France. That is why this becomes important. Why this becomes important is because most of the people fled from the country towards the countryside. So that is reflected in his poetry. That is why I'm telling you, all of these things become important for us as students of competitive exams, and we need to keep all of these three things in our mind. So first we have three kings, then we have three historical events, and then last thing is that we have the division of work. How do we divide Chaucer's work? Now, as I told you, that Chaucer's family was well connected. I told you his father was a wine merchant. His mother was also, she was also in some royal household. That is why he had connections with the royal family. That is why he was traveling. That is why he went to France also. So that influence is seen in his poetry. That influence is seen in his works. That is why his work can be divided into three eras. The first is his French influence, or you can say influence also. And again, very favorite question of the examiners. The first influence was of the French. The second was when he went to Italy. So we can see in his works an Italian reference, and then third, Italian reference or Italian influence, and then third, he came onto his own at the very end when he was maturing, when his poetry was maturing. That is when he started writing in English, and that is why we have Geoffrey Chaucer as the father of English literature. So I told you the historical background, that these are the things that you need to keep in mind. I told you some, normal biography facts, that what is the birth date, what do the parents do, etc. And now we will move on, and that is the last bit, and that is what is the most important out of all of that. Is that, see, I have told you what all is important here. The date 1381 becomes important here, 116, and here 1/3 of the population, and this only just the name, okay? Because sometimes it comes that in how many divisions can we divide Chaucer's work, or how many areas he got influenced from. So that is it. You just need to keep this in mind. English came towards the end, French because he was coming into his own, and Italian was when he was traveling around Italy and some parts of it. Now we will understand what all what all other people have said about Chaucer, and that is a question which is most frequently asked. Second, most frequently children make error in that, because it is very difficult, and I know it is very difficult for us to even keep all of these things in mind, that which poet has said what about whom, because now we'll understand Spencer also, then Milton will also come, then Shakespeare will also come, so it becomes a lot. That is why keep on going through this video, and then you can easily revise. Again, I will wait for a few minutes, just 2 seconds, so that you can take a quick screenshot, and then we will come back. Okay, now we will understand why is Chaucer called the father of English poetry, who called him that, and what all other writers, what all other poets have said about him, and also which are the most important ones, and which are the ones which we can skip through, or we just need to keep that in our mind. Okay, first, father of English poetry. See, sometimes I'll tell you how this question comes. Sometimes it comes directly. Who is the father of English poetry? We know Geoffrey Chaucer. Then it comes that who called Geoffrey Chaucer the father of English poetry, and the answer is John Dryden. Second, we have John Dryden itself, who said about Chaucer's work, here is God's plenty. And these are direct notes which you need to make, which you need to keep in mind. Again, that is said by John Dryden, and he actually said about Canterbury Tales. He actually said about the narrative of the Canterbury Tales, about the prologue of Canterbury Tales. John Dryden said about Geoffrey Chaucer. But John Dryden also said about Chaucer that he is a rough diamond who must be polished. That is also said by Dryden. So we have these three things which are said by John Dryden. Then we have fourth, Chaucer is often called the grandfather of English novel. And who said this? This is said by G.K. Chesterton. Now, again, this question directly comes, very famous question. This question directly comes, who is called the grandfather of English novel? So you have to write Chaucer. Who said Chaucer the grandfather of English novel? It is G.K. Chesterton. Okay, so now by now you have understood what do I mean by this. That sometimes sometimes it is also asked this, who is called the grandfather. Sometimes it is called who called him the grandfather. So it comes both way. Then we have fifth, who said, and a very important quote, that Chaucer found, I'll give you a way to keep these things in your mind also, the way I kept all of these things in my mind. First, let us go through all the quotes, and then at the end, I'll tell you. Chaucer found his native dialect and left it a language. This is said by Lowell. So just a very small thing, it is L is here, so L is here, and dialect also L is there, so you can keep that in mind, L and L. So Lowell said this. Then next we have Chaucer is the morning star of Renaissance. This is said by Edward Albert
Then we have three quotes from Matthew Arnold. For example, what are the three quotes? We have, with Chaucer is born our real poetry. Very important quote. And who said this? This was said by Arnold. He said three things. First, with Chaucer is born our real poetry. Then he said that Chaucer is earliest of the great moderns. This is also said by Arnold. And we have ninth. He actually appreciated with these two, and then one he criticized, that Chaucer lacks not only the accent of Dante but also his high seriousness. This is also said by Arnold. Then we have two more, and because they are very short as compared to these two, yeah, we can write here. We can make use of the space here. Chaucer, well of English undefiled. Very important, often asked question, and this is said by none other than Spencer, Edmund Spencer. And last, we have a long, very long critical appreciation. If Chaucer had written in prose and not poetry, then Troilus and Cressida is a work by Chaucer and not Pamela. Pamela is actually considered to be first English novel. Then Troilus and Cressida and not Pamela would have been our first novel. This is said by S.D. Neil. So all of these are very important, and these are the most important 11 quotes which I have seen, which I have taken the content from all the exams, all the MCQs which I have seen, and this is what I have prepared a list for you people. Now I will tell you which are the most important ones. See, I will tell you not to suggest not to skip anything, because these 11, if you read continuously again and again, it will be fixed in your mind for all times. But if you want to, if you are on a time crunch, if you want to leave something, do not leave these which I'm making a star on. Father of English Poetry by John Dryden. Here is God's Plenty. See, I'll tell you how to learn, and then we'll see which are the ones we can skip. If someone is a father, okay, then that person would be a god also, right? For example, fathers are godlike to us. So father and god, someone who said that that he's a father and he's a god, he was John Dryden. Okay, but he also said, and fathers are like diamond. So father, god and diamond, all these three words, keep in mind, are said by one person who is John Dryden. Then we have grandfather. So grandfather is a very big name. So G.K. Chester son is a very big name. Okay, or you can take son also. So grandfather and son, you can make a connection of that. This I have already told you. We have L here, L, and we have in the answer also we have different L's. So that is also there. Okay, then morning star of Renaissance. This I am unable to give you a mnemonic of. So this we can learn directly that he was the morning star of Renaissance, Edward Albert. And I'll kid you not, this is the one I actually also forget sometimes because there is no mnemonic. So it usually skips our mind, but it's okay. Okay, so how do we keep in mind Arnold? Now Arnold was someone who was writing during modernism only. When we'll understand modernism, then we'll see. So he's talking about modernism. He's talking about how and modernists believe that real poetry is starting from this. So that is what he says, that modernism and real poetry, Arnold is someone who is writing during that era. So we can make that link in our mind about Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold is his full name. Then this is very important, Chaucer, Well of English Undefiled, and Spenser. You will see when we do Spenser that he is someone who wrote in archaic English. So he has used all of these words, undefiled and well. So maybe you can relate to that. And then this SD Neil, this is very easy because if you understand this carefully, this will be kept in mind. So I hope I have helped you through critical appreciation, because I know this is very tedious, and to learn each and everything, it is quite a task. So in the next video we will focus more on Chaucer's other works, and first we'll understand his timeline a little bit. Who he married, I have skipped that because who he married, how he married, when he married, sometimes those questions come. So we will take that in the next video, and in the second video we will about Chaucer, we will understand his works, his contributions on English literature. And then in the next, in the third video, that is what my plan is for Chaucer. In the third video we will only focus on Canterbury Tales, what questions come from Canterbury Tales, what things, what facts we need to keep in mind when we are dealing with Chaucer. And that's it. In I think 3 to 4 videos for one poet, for Chaucer, more than enough. And if you go through the videos again and again, I'm saying go through the videos multiple times, make notes, do MCQs. If you are unable to find, use ChatGPT, give a prompt, and it will give you many questions, many MCQs based on that. And if you have any doubt, you can leave in the comment section. If you want to reach out to us to understand anything, if you have any confusion about how to prepare for DSSSB, how to prepare for KVS, NVS, because we have exams lined up in this year, and more or less if you are a serious candidate, you will get a job. So if you have any problem, you feel free. In the description box there is an email, there is an Instagram ID. You reach out to us, send questions, send MCQs, send anything and everything which you want me to do, and I will decode it for you. Thank you for staying, thank you for watching the video. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel so that if there is any new video, that is not missed. Thank you everyone.